Hi, everyone, and greetings from the Red Team. I hope you all like my artificial intelligence generated opening slide here. My name is Michael Allen, and I am a red teamer and penetration tester at Black Hills Information Security. I've been doing pen testing and red teaming for about 9.5 years now. And my main interest is in the initial access phase of the red team exercise or pen test, where we try and gain access to the target environment on our own from the internet without having to be granted access by the customer or anything. So because of that, I am the creator and instructor of a class that's available through Anti-Siphon called Red Team Initial Access. The newest version of that is going to be available this June. And this attack I'm going to be going through today is one of the attacks that I teach in that class. This is one that's been working well for us on red teams for about the last 6 months or so. And I'm going to go through the mindset and methodology that led to the development of this attack, how the attack works, and then some defenses for the attack. Before I get started with all that, I also want to just give a shout out to Joseph Kingstone at BHIS. He's on the red team too. He was on the first red team exercise with me whenever we executed this attack. And he was a huge help in developing this attack and giving me feedback and input. And since we ran this for the first time, he's been running it on red team exercises, and I've been running it on red team exercises, and it's been working well for both of us. So big thanks to him for all of his input and support on coming up with this too. So before I start digging into the details of the attack, let me set the stage with kind of what the hurdles are that we run into on the initial access phase of a red team today. So when I started pen testing, and in the years that came before that, defenses were a lot worse than they are today. Email defenses, for example, were unsophisticated or not existent at all. Antivirus products were really terrible. It was easy to just take Metasploits or some other tool and generate a payload that you could just run on just about any computer without any problems for antivirus. There was no such thing as endpoint detection and response products or EDR back then. End users, a lot of them had never heard of social engineering, and security awareness training was pretty limited. And even the internal IT department and the organization itself had limited knowledge of the network topology internally, the devices that were on the internal network, and the services that were exposed to the internet. So back then, defenders were pretty much operating blind. And as you can imagine, things were a lot easier for us as attackers. Today, things are a lot different. This slide here is just a short list of some of the defenses that we're up against whenever we're trying to get into a modern, well-defended organization. And that's what we're usually facing on a red team exercise, because red team customers, they're already doing penetration testing. So they've got multiple layers of security in place, and they've got a good handle on their defense and monitoring and all that kind of stuff. So when we go into a red team exercise, we need a plan that we are going to run into every one of these different types of defense that we could run into, because it's not enough for us to just hope that they're not going to have that one thing that we don't have some kind of plan for. So because of that, because all environments are going to probably have these things, these different strong defenses, and because each of these defenses is built by an individual, team of people. Like, these are often products or services that are built by third parties and have a dedicated team of professionals building them. It really doesn't make any sense for us to try and go head to head with every one of these defenses, because as a red team, we might be a small team of 2 or 3 individuals. We've got a limited amount of time, and we just don't have the same expertise that all those teams of individuals are going to have in every single one of those fields. We don't have the resources. We just can't really compete. It's not an even match like you might see if you were watching a boxing match, for example. The 2 contenders in a boxing match are evenly matched. They're in the same weight class. They've got similar training. They're in similar shape. And they're going to go head to head, and we're going to see who's the best at boxing. But in real world attacks, it's not like that. Real world attackers are constantly trying to find ways to cheat and find unfair advantages so that they can get the upper hand on a much greater opposition, larger team with more experience, more expertise, and more time to just focus on that one little area of defense. So we have to do the same thing as red teamers. We really have to think outside the box. So that is where my starting point was, trying to come up with some kind of new attack that was going to be effective on a red team exercise. And while I was trying to think of a new attack, these are the three kind of key points that were on my mind. And as I go through these, I mean, these are kind of common sense whenever you just sit down and think about it. But uh, when you're stuck in that head to head mindset, it's easy to let things like this go by the wayside. So attack where your opponent is weakest, be in the place your opponent cannot see, do what your opponent does not expect. And again, like, fairly obvious things. If you do these things, if you can do these things, then you're probably going to succeed in some kind of conflict, whatever that may be. So to dig into this a little bit deeper, I started defining, well, where are the defensive strongholds? Where are the things that I believe that just about any organization that I'm up against is probably going to have very good security. One, the communication channels. Well, the email channel, for example, is very well defended these days. It's very hard sometimes to get an email to land in a user's inbox. There's all kinds of defensive products and services that can be applied there. Chat messages like Microsoft Teams, that's one we've been using with good success over the last couple of years, but more and more that's becoming defended, and that can be actually just turned off. You can turn off external chat messages. So that's something we can't count on as a way in. Security awareness training. Well, the users are trained to expect attacks via email, via phone calls, SMS messages, even chat messages now that we've been using that. So anytime a user gets an unexpected email, it's going to make them a little bit more suspicious than maybe some other channels would. Also, users are trained to scrutinize the things we use for payloads over those channels. So, attachments and URLs, the users can easily just look at those types of payloads and see, does this domain make sense for what I'm being asked to do here? Does this file extension make sense? Or are these suspicious? And is this something I should not click on? The defenses on the endpoint, I've mentioned the EDR products that we're always up against on the user's workstation. So that's a difficult defense for us to get around. Also, the network defenses on the internal network and by extension, the VPN are also difficult for us to overcome, and we have to take measures to get around those things. And then we've got the external access controls. Now, the external access controls in this case were one that I was willing to contend with because we've got a few known reliable attacks that work well for us currently against things like multi-factor authentication and geolocation. So I didn't care too much about those in this one, and making up this attack. There's mainly these red ones that I really, really wanted to get around. So that's why that appears yellow there. So then taking the opposite approach and saying, all right, well, if that's where they're really well defended, where are they completely undefended? Where can't they defend? And where can we not be seen? And where are the things that we do going to be unexpected? Over communication channels, one that came to mind to me was physical mail that's delivered to the user's home. So there's no way that I'm aware of that any company, at least inside the United States, maybe it's different in other places, can observe the mail, the contents of the physical mail that comes to someone's home and do anything to block malicious mail that's sent to someone's home address. So that's good in the realm of completely invisible to that parent organization. The security awareness training, well, along the same line, I have not yet seen security awareness training that an organization provides that tells users to be watching out for attacks against the organization to arrive at their home address. So, unlike email, where users are likely to have a little red flag go off in their mind and get some suspicion whenever they see an email come in that's unexpected, something coming to their home address, it's probably not going to receive the same level of suspicion. And then the payloads that we can send through the mail, like the links and file attachments I mentioned before were easy to scrutinize just by visual inspection. QR codes, on the other hand, are not easy to scrutinize by visual inspection. You have to scan the QR code in order to inspect and see, is it something that looks legitimate or not. So there's no way to tell if a QR code is legit or not just by looking at it. The defense is on the endpoint. Well, the solution there is actually in the name, on the endpoint. So if we can just guarantee that our attack will happen off of that endpoint, the user's workstation, then we're going to be good to go. We're going to be able to get around the defenses that are on the endpoint. Same thing for the network defenses. If we can guarantee that our attack happens off the network, then we are no longer contending with those network defenses. So if we can make sure the attack happens on the user's home internet or mobile internet connection, then we're going to be off of that corporate network that's well defended. And then, of course, this external access controls I mentioned, we're not too concerned about those right now. So now as you look through this list, you can kind of see where this is going. The solution actually starts to become more and more self-apparent the more we think about where it's not possible to defend. So from this, a new attack was born. And the first layer of this attack is what you see on screen now. This is the envelope that we send to our target user's home address. And the nice thing about sending something through the mail like this is we can control everything that's on the outside of the envelope. So we can control the return address up in the top left corner, and we could put whatever company name and address we want there. So we put the company name and address of the company that the individual works for, and we give this a nice professional looking font and everything and make it look as much like it came from a company as possible. And then we do the same thing with the contents. So inside the envelope is this postcard, and this is the front of the postcard. On the postcard, we've got the company logo, so that looks official. We've got some text where the color scheme of the text matches the company logo. So we're trying to do everything, as polished as possible. Give it some text that sounds kind of cheesy, like somebody in HR wrote it, and a nice high resolution photo. And it ends up being a really professional looking postcard. On the back, we've got a letter on the right-hand side that's got the target user's name and the name of their real, chief human resources officer in this case, or whoever it might be that makes sense for this ruse to come from. And the letter says, it's our pleasure to inform this person that someone at work nominated them for a peer recognition award, and they're going to receive a $50 Amazon gift card because of this award. So, hopefully they're going to be pretty excited to receive this Amazon gift card. And all they've got to do is follow the instructions on this postcard in order to get it, which is use your phone to scan the QR code and then log in with your company account. We've got the company logo again. We've got the Amazon logo. So it's really professional looking and, very trustworthy looking. And there's no way to tell just looking at that QR code where the QR code goes. And if this has arrived at the person's home address, we know they're not on the company network. We know they're scanning it with their personal device on some form of personal network. And the next thing that's going to happen is that URL that's in the QR code is going to be opened in the web browser on their personal device, on their phone. When they do that, they're going to see something along the lines of this. Now, in this case, it's the Microsoft 365 login page. We would use whatever login portal the company uses. So if they use Microsoft, it'd be something like this. If they use Okta, it'd be the Okta login portal, whatever. The only thing that gives this away as an attack, if the user checks it out, is the domain name that's up here in the address bar. So we've got to pick a domain that we purchase that matches our ruse and that is going to survive a little bit of scrutiny if the user notices it. They may not notice it at all. If they don't notice it, everything else is going to look exactly the way that it normally looks when they log in at work, because we're using a tool called Evil Jinx to do an adversary in the middle attack. So what this is doing is when they browse to our server, our Evil Jinx server is then going out and sending a request to their real login portal. And it is getting the content from their real login portal and showing that to the user. So the user sees the real login page, they submit their username and password. Then Evil Jinx goes out and gets the next step of the login process, which is going to be the multi-factor prompt. In this case, it's a multi-factor prompt asking for an authenticator app code. It might be a step that asks for an SMS code. It might be a push notification. Whatever it is, it's going to function exactly how it normally functions because they're actually interacting with the real login portal. They're just doing it through our adversary in the middle. So after they complete that login process, we have captured their session token, the session cookie, that is used to authenticate the browser to the real login portal. So now we've got access to their account. So we can go and log into that Microsoft portal as them using that cookie, but we don't send them to the portal from here because we didn't tell them we were going to log them into Microsoft 365. We told them we were going to give them an Amazon gift card. So that's what we do. After the login is complete, we then forward their browser on to a landing page that has a real Amazon gift card on it. And this is really important. And this is kind of key to the attack for a couple of reasons. So by giving them a Amazon gift card, a $50 Amazon gift card, one, we put positive emotions in their mind. We're giving them positive reinforcement for all the actions that they just took because they got something out of the mail. It says they're going to get a reward, and they do all these steps. They log in, and we want to reinforce that, with positive reinforcement so that they don't get suspicious or anything. If we didn't give them the gift card code, or if the gift card code didn't work, the next thing they're going to do is contact that person in HR, and they're going to say, hey, my code didn't work. Can you help me? And that's going to go back and forth. And then there's going to be an investigation. At some point, security is going to get involved. The other thing is all those security awareness training phishing emails they get at work, they frequently have empty promises. So they frequently say things like, we'll enter you in a drawing to win an iPad or an Amazon gift card or whatever. And they never win because there's never anything to win. So they're actually unintentionally getting trained that attacks, like real attacks and training attacks, whatever they may be, the attacker doesn't actually give you anything. So therefore, if you get something, like if you get a $50 gift card, then that's evidence that this was not a real attack. So we're further reinforcing the fact that this is normal and this is good by giving them the gift card. Now you might be wondering, well, how did we get the address to send them the postcard in the first place? Well, that's actually really easy to do. We can either use a paid service, which there are several of those out there where you can search for someone's name and get their address, or we can just do it for free by going on LinkedIn, looking up the company, and then finding the employees that are connected with that company on LinkedIn. And then on LinkedIn, it shows you their city and state or whatever the region is that they're located in. So we just go to a free people search online, search for the same name and the same location, and we'll get a bunch of addresses. Now, if it's a common name, there'll be 5 or 6 or more people in those search results, and each of them will have multiple addresses. But if it's a fairly unique name or uncommon for that area, then there's just going to be one result, and we know that's the right person. So this is just an area where we're selective whenever we're choosing what target we're going to go after in searching for our targets. The other nice thing I should mention before I go on is this is resilient to attack, or I'm sorry, this is resilient to failure if we should accidentally choose the wrong address. So that's another thing you might be thinking is like, well, what if it's the wrong address? If they log in, if someone who's not our intended victim tries to log into the portal, they've received the thing in the mail and they scan the QR code, they're not going to be able to log in. And because of that, we're not going to steal anyone's session cookie because they're not going to be logged in, and they're not going to receive the Amazon gift card. So this is very resilient to errors on our part because we don't have to worry about if we accidentally hack someone without a scope. They can't be hacked because they didn't have a password and an account for us to hack in the first place, and they're not going to get that gift card, so we don't have to worry about losing $50 for someone who wasn't a target. So after I've gone through this whole process of walking around the security and trying to go to places where the defenses are impossible, how do you defend an attack like that? For that, I've got a few little suggestions here. The first is security awareness training. So having quality security awareness training is really critical. The security awareness training is really the first line of defense against any kind of new or novel social engineering attack, because there will not be technical controls to prevent something that's completely unexpected and hasn't been done before. The key with the security awareness training is to make sure that it's concept or principle focused, and that the users also receive regular practice over multiple channels. And these two things will make sure that the users are expecting the unexpected, and they're being trained to look for suspicious qualities and to verify suspicious actions or situations, no matter what channel it comes over. So, right now, if you were doing quarterly email phishing, you might decide to change that up and do maybe email this quarter and maybe text messages next quarter, and then Teams messages or LinkedIn or even something through the mail the following quarter. And by changing it up like that, you train the user to expect the unexpected. Number two, allow login only from the internal network or VPN. So that way, any device someone's going to log in from, it has to be connected to the VPN or on the internal network. That's one way that defenders can take back some control of the battlefield. So this is the same slide from earlier, that where most of this was green and then the last one was orange or yellow. And now, by only allowing login from the internal network or VPN, we've added an external access control. So now there's an additional bullet here: strong monitoring defenses, external logins disallowed. That's because we have forced the attackers back onto the internal network. And now we as attackers are having to contend with those strong monitoring and defenses on the internal network once again. And because of that, we are no longer able to take advantage of vulnerabilities that we know of in multi-factor authentication, geolocation, and other external access controls like that. And then the last suggestion here is phishing resistant multi-factor authentication. An example of that is FIDO2. So the FIDO2 multi-factor token is not vulnerable to tools like Evil Jinx that do the adversary in the middle attack, where your application or like mobile application or SMS, the push notification, those type of tokens typically are vulnerable to adversary in the middle attacks. So just switching to the stronger authentication token for multi-factor is going to authenticate both the device that the user is logging in from and the user's identity themselves. And that will defeat this type of attack as well. And with that, that is the end of this talk. So thank you all for listening. If you'd like to learn more, I've got a couple of links here on the last slide, and the slide deck will be available online after the talk. Thank you all.